Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, Mayor Eric Adams released a $106.7 billion budget proposal for the 2024 fiscal year. The Editorial and Policy Director for the Center for an Urban Future joins me later to discuss concerns over some budget cuts. What impacts will these cuts have on our city? Then, with an updated guideline from the FDA and the addition of AI technology, we may be able to detect breast cancer sooner rather than later. Director of Radiology at MSK Westchester joins me later to discuss these new achievements. Are there cons to relying on advanced technology like AI in health? After that, MJHS Health System launched a free training opportunity for certified nursing assistants. The assistant administrator for MJHS Isabella Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing Care will share more details later on. Why is it important to encourage more individuals to join the healthcare field? And finally, healthcare professionals across the country recognize May 6th through May 12th as National Nurse Week. The Director at Large for NYSNA joins me later to discuss some ongoing issues nurses are still facing. What are some challenges nurses are currently experiencing? So stay tuned, all this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello, everyone. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today is Tuesday, May 9th. You're now watching Open, a program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Mayor Eric Adams released a $106.7 billion budget proposal for fiscal year 2024. This budget proposal is currently the largest executive budget in city history. However, budget cuts to several institutions could possibly hinder the city's economic growth. Joining me to discuss this concern is Editorial and Policy Director for the Center of an Urban Future, Eli Dvorkin. Eli, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me today.
Now, I want to jump right into it. Can you just talk about what an annual executive budget is? I've heard it before, but it's not something that I'm super familiar with, and I'm sure others probably feel the same. So can you just explain what that is?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. So, we are, I think the technical term is neck deep in budget season right now. This is really the middle of the process. The executive budget is a document that comes from the mayor of New York City, and it is not the first budget that the mayor has proposed. That starts back at the beginning of the year with what's called the preliminary budget. Then the city council holds hearings, produces a budget response document, and this executive budget is essentially the mayor's response to that budget, the council's response. This is the mayor's response to the response, if you will, that incorporates some of their feedback. It also reshuffles some of his own priorities. And ultimately, it's the last draft document that the city will put forward before the final budget is decided before July 1st.
Now, who gets to help make these decisions? You talked a little bit about council members. Do they say what they would like? And then eventually at this part, this is where the mayor says, yes, we can do that, or no?
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that going on. So the council's already been holding a round of hearings that were to review the preliminary budget and to craft a response. That response came out just a couple of weeks ago. And so this is really the mayor, in some cases, responding to the council's shifting priorities or where the council sees the need for the greatest additional investment, but also reshuffling some priorities of his own. And at this point, we now get a clearer picture of what the mayor wants to put forward for next year's budget, where he's already moving a little bit closer to the council's position, but also some areas where we see that the council and the mayor are still quite far apart.
Now, according to City and State, Mayor Adams said they had to make some very tough decisions, and that includes cuts to places like New York Public Library or just public libraries in general, and CUNYs. Can you explain basically what that means and what could be cut from either of these institutions?
Sure. So unfortunately, these are two of, I think, the most concerning potential cuts in next year's budget. What we've seen so far is that CUNY is facing a budget decrease compared to last year of almost $90 million. Now, the city has actually put additional dollars into CUNY this year compared to last year, but CUNY's also lost some significant federal funding that it had during the pandemic, as well as some funding that comes from other city agencies. And so ultimately, the whole institution is facing a net decrease of about $89 million. So that's a real concern for New Yorkers who care about economic mobility, which CUNY is expert at. Now, the libraries are also facing significant cuts in this year's budget. You may have heard some news in the last couple of weeks that the mayor's called off the budget cuts. That's not really accurate. What happened was the mayor has said that the program to eliminate the gap, a kind of mid-year budget reduction program from April, will not apply to the city's libraries. But the libraries are still subject to an earlier peg from January, and they're also facing an overall decrease in their annual budget for next year. So despite holding off on the April peg, the city's 3 library systems are also currently facing a reduction of about $40 million compared to last year.
Now, I'm pretty sure these are like maybe the 2 most concerning, as you mentioned, but I'm sure there are other cuts. What impact will this just have on our city overall?
Sure. Well, I think these 2 reductions that we're talking about are really particularly concerning because New York City is still facing enormous challenges in ensuring an equitable and full recovery for all New Yorkers from the impact of the pandemic. And I think these 2 institutions are uniquely well positioned to help the city come out of that period and be able to create the fundamental bedrock of a more equitable city in the future. And what I mean by that is, well, first of all, the cuts at CUNY could actually impact not only faculty and staff lines, but some of the most effective student success programs that CUNY offers today. Programs like the CUNY ASAP initiative, the CUNY ACE program, which are helping students beat the odds and achieve graduation rates that really aren't possible without the support of those programs. But CUNY is going to have to make some tough decisions if these cuts go through. And one of the potential consequences would be a reduction in the number of seats available in those kinds of student success initiatives that are actually boosting college completion rates and helping more New Yorkers achieve economic opportunity. Now, the same is really true of libraries, where on the chopping block right now, we're seeing Saturday service, longer hours, programs that New Yorkers depend on, whether that's early literacy programs or specific programs for teens or for older adults, for immigrants. So there's some really difficult decisions on the table for those institutions right now that really don't have much fat left to cut.
Now, I always say this as somebody who grew up in a library. The library offers so much, and I think that sometimes it can often get overlooked. And you mentioned the importance of just CUNY programs helping people, achieve higher education. When I was looking at this, I couldn't help but realize that, this is affecting education in our city. Could you just talk about, why that's how could that impact low income communities, especially, where places like the library offers free services. Sometimes there's stuff for people who speak different languages. Could you just talk about, how that's going to affect some vulnerable New Yorkers?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think both CUNY and our city's public libraries are really the key opportunity institutions that we have in New York City. They help New Yorkers every single day from low income backgrounds be able to move into the middle class, to be able to access programs and services that they're eligible for but might not know about, to really support the entire continuum of learning from early literacy all the way through to degree granting programs for working adults. And so all of these programs and services really help the most vulnerable New Yorkers, help low-income New Yorkers get ahead. And the risk right now is that these are not being treated as investments in the city's economic and social well-being, but really as just sort of budget items to cut. That's really the wrong way to look at this. I mean, for instance, a CUNY degree is so incredibly transformative in the lives of many New Yorkers. And a New Yorker with a bachelor's degree will earn about $1.1 million more over their lifetime than someone without one. And CUNY helps more New Yorkers from low-income backgrounds earn degrees than any other institution. But it needs the support of these city dollars to be able to invest in the programs that actually help boost college completion. For instance, like the CUNY ACE program for senior college students, which is boosting graduation rates by about 25%. But those programs require operating dollars to be able to continue, and there's a real risk that they may not with these budget cuts in place.
Now, how will these cuts hinder economic growth and development, just in general, for our city?
Sure. Well, I think that's a really interesting question because a lot of folks might not assume that investments in social infrastructure like libraries or educational institutions like CUNY would have an impact on economic growth or economic development. But I think really right now what we're seeing is that New York City's talent, the ability of New York City to develop the talent that employers need today, that our economy needs to thrive, is really the city's greatest competitive advantage. The more that we can, as a city, invest in programs and institutions that help New Yorkers gain the skills and education and experiences they need to thrive in a fast changing economy, not only will we create a more equitable economy, but we'll create a stronger economy that's more competitive with other cities around the globe. So these kinds of investments are critical for ensuring that we have a strong and an equitable economy going forward.
Now, I understand you work for the Center for an Urban Future, where your organization focuses on reducing inequality, increasing economic mobility, and just grow the economy in general in New York City. Considering that these budgets, this budget just has to happen in general. What is something that you feel could have been done to avoid the situation, but still kind of get to where we need to be when it comes to making these tough decisions?
Yeah, well, there's no question that it's a difficult process. There's some real macro challenges facing the city's economy, the decline in potential tax revenues from the hit that commercial real estate is taking, some of the bigger unanswered questions about the future of New York City's economy in an age of remote and hybrid work. These are big questions. I think in many cases, there's some thinking that's gone into this budget that does get ahead of some of those potential challenges. For instance, full funding for the CUNY Reconnect initiative that's helping New Yorkers with some college credits but no degree to return to CUNY and complete. That's not only a college completion strategy, it's also boosting CUNY's enrollment after years of declines. It's also helping New Yorkers, and there's about 680,000 folks in this category with some college credits but without a credential, to be able to earn the degrees where they can actually get ahead in our fast-changing economy. So these are smart long-term investments, but I think that's the thinking that needs to go into this budget from the get-go, to be able to focus on investments in social and economic mobility as the underpinnings of a strong economy. And frankly, public libraries play a critical role there too. We need to be investing in that kind of social infrastructure so that New Yorkers feel like no matter which community they live in, that they live in a place where they have the opportunities to thrive. And that might look like, in the case of public libraries, more dollars for actually opening longer hours to be available to working adults and parents on the weekends, early mornings or later in the evenings. And right now, we're actually seeing that the investments that we have in our library systems today don't allow our libraries to be open as long as those in Seattle or in Columbus, Ohio, or in Toronto, Canada. So we actually have a long way to go to be able to make our city more comparable to some of those other places in terms of the resources that we provide our residents.
Now, what can people do if they notice some of the, the resources that they rely on are disappearing? And this is due to the budget cuts. And they'll probably see them sometime soon. What can they do when they notice that?
Well, first I'll say none of this is in stone just yet. The state's budget has just been finalized at the time the show is airing. We're going to see some real changes. The mayors had to be smart about thinking through what the city budget will look like without knowing at that time what the state budget was going to look like. So this process is very much fluid. Folks that can care and are concerned about these issues should reach out to their elected officials. The budget will be negotiated over the next few weeks, and there won't be a final budget until June. So there is time to influence the process as a New Yorker, to get informed about what is and what isn't in the budget. Frankly, I encourage New Yorkers, and I think very few of my fellow New Yorkers do this today, but to check out New York City's Office of Management and Budget website. The budget documents are there. They're not, hidden away for only experts to look at. Any New Yorker can actually review these documents themselves and learn by doing how the city budget is actually made. And doing so, I think, gains some real power as a resident to be able to influence the city's future direction.
All right. Well, Eli, thank you so much for joining me and having this discussion.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
To keep up with the Center for an Urban Future, please go to their website at www.nysfuture.org. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Open right after this.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa los hombres no lloran.
You alright?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad. Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Ooh.
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
¿Qué color? Perfecto, mijo.
Gracias. Thank you.
What's wrong, mijo?
Donating to a pet's medical care is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Welcome back. The FDA released new guidelines requiring mammogram providers to notify patients about breast density. With these updated guidelines and the addition of AI technology, health professionals are expected to detect breast cancer much earlier. Joining me to discuss this effort is the Director of Radiology at MSK Westchester, Dr. Sandra B. Brennan. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, as I mentioned, the FDA's new rules will require mammogram providers to just notify women if they have dense breast tissue. Can you first just, explain what does it mean to have dense breast tissue?
Sure. So breasts are made up of fibrous tissue, glandular tissue, and fat. And depending on how much dense tissue you have compared to fat determines whether you have dense breasts or not dense breasts. So a radiologist can tell by looking at the mammogram if a woman has dense breasts. And about a half of women have dense breasts.
And how could that be a threat, if your breast tissue is very dense? How could that be a threat to detecting breast cancer?
So having dense breasts actually increases your risk of developing breast cancer. We know that women who have extremely dense breasts compared to women who have fatty breasts have a 4-time increased risk of developing cancer. In addition, it's harder to detect a cancer on a mammogram if you have a lot of dense tissue because the cancer may appear white on the mammogram and may be obscured by the white overlying dense tissue.
Now, for those who do have dense breast tissue, what could their screening process efforts look like? And, how may it differ for somebody who has maybe less dense breast tissue?
So by empowering patients, letting them know that they have dense breast tissue, then they can make informed decisions about their screening and how that should look. So women with dense breasts may consider supplemental screening, such as breast ultrasound. At Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, we also offer supplemental screening with contrast mammography, which is shown to be almost as sensitive as MRI and very accurate. And depending on a woman's other risk factors and their density, they can tailor their screening based on that. They can talk to their healthcare provider and decide which screening is best for them.
And can you quickly just go over, what some of those risk factors are? Because I know a lot of people, sometimes they often don't really pay attention to it, or they don't think it's something that can necessarily happen to them. So can you quickly just explain what those risk factors are?
Sure. We have modifiable risk factors and then non-modifiable risk factors. So non-modifiable risk factors would be being a woman, of course, having dense breasts, your age. So as you get older, your risk of developing breast cancer increases. And then non-modifiable risk factors would be your family history. So having a lot of relatives, women in your family who've had breast cancer, or having a man in the family who's also had breast cancer. So these are certain things that will increase your risk. Then we know there are also genetic alterations that can increase your risk. So having a gene mutation will increase your risk compared to the average woman, such as the BRCA gene, AR2 mutation, and then also having received radiation at a young age to the chest will increase your risk of developing breast cancer at an older age.
Now, according to the CDC, women with dense breasts have a higher chance of getting breast cancer. You also recently just said this yourself. Can you just explain whether or not is this a common current occurrence? So, is this something that most women should be fearful of or concerned about?
So I think it's important to know that having dense breasts does increase your risk of developing breast cancer, and then those women can be more vigilant, checking for changes and how their breasts normally look or feel, and also being very vigilant about their screening. If you know you're at a higher risk, then you want to make sure you're going for your annual screening and also doing supplemental screening if necessary. So having dense breasts increases your risk and also makes it more difficult to detect cancer on a mammogram.
Now, I think this is where things get a little bit more interesting. With the advancement of technology, AI can be used to detect breast cancer. I just want to know, as a health professional, what were your initial thoughts when you heard that this was something that could be possible?
So breast cancer is the leading cause of death amongst women across the world. So any tool that will help us to strengthen the fight against breast cancer, I welcome. So computer-aided detection has been around for over 2 decades, but now with artificial intelligence, that tool has become more refined and more sensitive and accurate.
And can you just talk a little bit more about computer assisted detection and just explain, how that process actually works?
So the technology at the heart of AI systems is called a neural network. This is like deep learning. So machines are fed a vast amount of data. So in the case of screening, we feed them normal mammograms, abnormal mammograms, and they learn to recognize patterns and images and detect cancers. They can segment lesions and increase the speed at which the images can be reviewed, highlight areas on a mammogram for the radiologist to hone in on. So they can be tools that can help radiologists in detecting cancer on a mammogram, so that we can find cancers as early as possible.
Now, how does this compare to more traditional ways of detection?
So traditionally, the mammogram was actually a 2D mammogram, which is 4 images. With newer technologies, now we have digital breast tomosynthesis, also known as a 3D mammogram. And compared to traditionally having only 4 images to look at, we now have hundreds of images to look at in a single mammogram. So with artificial intelligence technology, that can help us to look through all these additional images and help the radiologist to identify abnormalities and also streamline our workflow and help triage cases that require more attention.
Now,
So traditionally, a radiologist read the images alone or double read with another reader, and early CAD systems didn't show any benefit with the technology 2 decades ago compared to a radiologist reading alone.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on the fact that you said that it's kind of been around a little bit for about 2 decades. And I'm just interested to know, as a doctor and a healthcare professional, how have you seen this technology or just the use of technology really transform, the healthcare field just in a positive way?
So, anything that will help us to do what we need to do to help, to read our cases, to identify cancer as early as possible, and to allow us to do our procedures. So there's a lot involved in being a radiologist, not just looking at the images. We also do biopsies and preoperative procedures for patients going for surgery, for lumpectomy. So having tools that will enable us to do our work efficiently and give results accurately and fast are something that we will embrace.
Now, one major study estimates that mammogram screenings miss about 1 in 8 cases of breast cancer. How will CAD help lessen that number? Or, what are some ways you hope that we can continue to grow so that number can be a lot lower?
So we know that mammograms are not perfect, and mammograms are better for some women compared to others. For example, women with dense breasts, the mammogram, the sensitivity is not as high in a woman who has non-dense breasts. So we hope that with AI technology, that it will help us to identify lesions in more difficult dense breast areas, so that we can detect cancer early.
Now, I'm sure with anything that has to do with technology, there's always like the good and the bad. So I'm curious to know, are there any cons to relying on advanced technology like AI in the healthcare system?
Well, this is still relatively early. We need more clinical trials to show that the results are stable. The data that has been fed into some of the systems are from populations, and we know there may be some disparities in cancer across populations and socioeconomic groups. So we don't know if there are disparities in the information or data that has been fed into these technologies that might be reproduced then if it were just rolled out without vigorous trials to show that it's reproducible and stable. So I think until we know that, and it has been tested on complex cases, for example, postoperative breast, maybe a difficult complex case where the AI may have difficulty detecting benign from non-benign lesions. So we want to make sure we don't overcall or have too many false positives. And also, of course, we do not want to have any false negatives.
Now, despite technological advancements, people should always just be alert when it comes to their bodies. So, can you just explain for people who have breasts, what should they do before they get screened, or how should they know when it's time to get screened? Could you just let everybody know that kind of information?
Sure. So women should be familiar with how their breasts feel and look, and be aware of any changes or lumps that they feel. If they notice any skin changes or dimpling, rash, any itching of the nipple, any nipple discharge, these are things that they should alert their healthcare provider about. And then we recommend that women start screening at age 40. We know that this leads to the most lives saved and the strongest reduction in mortality by starting screening at 40. And I think that's the most important take-home message, that while we have all these new technologies and artificial intelligence to help us, the most important thing is that women actually go and present for screening, because a mammogram will detect the most cancer and will save lives.
All right. Well, doctor, thank you so much for joining me to have this discussion.
Thank you.
If you want to know more about the MSKCC, please go to their website at www.mskcc.org. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgian?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed? Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug, you know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for ya. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
Throw my heart out there in the open. Trees make you feel small. Can't help but get lost again.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Thanks for hearing me out, bro.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Welcome back. With a mission to help aspiring healthcare professionals reach their goals, MJHS Health System launched a training opportunity for certified nursing assistants. The program aims to teach participants important skills and responsibilities of this hands-on role. The assistant administrator for MJHS Isabella Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing Care, Jessica Garcia-Robinson, joins me to discuss the program. Jessica, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's actually great to be back at Lehman College as an alum.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
Congrats. That's cool. Now, I want to talk about just nursing in general, because I think if you're outside of the healthcare system, you just think nurse and that's it. So can you just talk a little bit about the different roles, specifically for a certified nursing assistant?
So a certified nursing assistant plays a critical role. There's no doubt about that. So the CNA provides activities of daily living support with that. So that includes dressing, eating, bathing, as opposed to a registered nurse that holds a licensure that's able to provide medical care. And examples of that is medication administration, doing clinical assessments, while the CNA holds a certification to provide patient care under the supervision of a registered nurse.
Okay, thank you so much for explaining the difference, because I think for the longest time I never really could tell. So that clarifies so much for me. So thank you. Now, can you talk about the Certified Nursing Assistant Training Program?
Absolutely. Isabella Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing Care has been offering this program since 2007. But like many facilities during the height of the pandemic, it had to be on pause. Okay. We're excited to reinstate the program with the support in part by one of our board members. The program is typically 5 to 6 weeks. The state has a minimum hours of requirements that students must meet or participants must meet. But at Isabella Center, we offer additional hours, additional training hours. We do that for various reasons. We want to make sure that we're preparing students, participants for the field. Also, we want to give the support in terms of their experience.
Now, can you talk about, you said you want to prepare them for the field. Can you just talk about like why that's so important? Because I think a lot of people don't, they get into it because there's like, oh yeah, there's so, there's a lot of opportunity there. But it's really an important, position to have. So can you talk about, why that was important for your organization to make sure that you truly prepare them?
Absolutely. Healthcare, the industry, it's one that is rewarding, but also it's one that's significant. You're caring for people who are ill, and there are various ways to do that. Our job is to ensure that they're prepared, that they're caring for these individuals, our residents, I should say, with the utmost respect, that they're honoring their rights, and of course that they're treating them the way that they should be treated.
Now, what are the requirements needed to join this program?
The requirements are having a high school diploma or its equivalent, preferably experience as a caregiver or a health home aide, and also having the compassion to want to do it.
Now, what are some of the areas this program focuses on? So basically, what can people expect when they join this program?
The program focuses on a culmination of training areas, which include basic nursing skills, personal care skills, caring for individuals with cognitive impairments, like someone with dementia, Alzheimer's disease, also residents' rights, and making sure that they're supporting and assisting with their activities of daily living. And we do that through classroom instruction, clinical labs, and also on-unit direct care under the supervision of a RN, a registered nurse.
Now, why is it important to encourage more individuals to join the healthcare field? I can just, obviously outside of that, I know like during the pandemic, there was so much need for people in healthcare. Can you just explain why it's important that more people are encouraged to kind of take on these roles?
Yes. So people who join or enter the healthcare field want to help in some kind of way. Given the opportunity to help in itself is rewarding. So we want to make sure that we are encouraging people to join the field because that's what they want to do. They want to give back in some kind of way. Everyone knows someone that's medically ill or needs medical assistance.
Now, I understand that this is also a free program. That's correct?
It is a free program, absolutely.
Okay, now I think that's truly amazing because I think in regard to just healthcare, it tends to be, or people often think, oh my gosh, you have to go to school for so many years. It's so expensive. Can you talk about how, you guys are kind of stepping away from that ideology?
Yeah, so as mentioned, the program is supported in part by one of our board members, and Isabella Center is part of MJHS Health System, which is a nonprofit organization that's committed to eliminating barriers. And we pride ourselves in giving opportunities and access to education, and having the CNA training program is one of those.
Now, I'm curious to know a little bit, like we were talking about how this field is basically just about helping people, and of course, there's an opportunity for the participant to grow. But can you talk about, what inspired you, to also join this field?
Yeah. So Isabella Center offers various healthcare professions, which includes but not limited to social workers, dietitians, doctors, nurses, housekeepers, therapists of all sorts, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and recreational therapists. I'm living proof of a career advancement. When I went to Isabella, I was the supervisor for the recreation department. And then I became the director for recreation, and now I'm the assistant administrator. So the organization absolutely supports career advancement. I personally entered the field because I wanted to give back. I wanted to help. I definitely wanted to help, and I'm still doing that to this day.
That's amazing. And I love to hear that, organizations like yours, there is growth. Because I think a lot of times people feel maybe a little bit discouraged, like, oh, maybe I'm just starting out here. But there is an opportunity to kind of grow. Can you talk about, some of the opportunities that come after maybe you take this program and you go through it? What are some of the opportunities available to those participants?
Absolutely. So anyone who's becoming a CNA through this program, it's an entryway to the healthcare industry and also getting a healthcare career. The organization provides other opportunities for advancement, some including tuition reimbursement. So if anyone's interested in employment opportunities, they can visit www.mjhs.jobs.
Now, what are the qualities of a successful participant in this program? Because I think a lot of people are going to hear this. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, I definitely want to join. But what does it take to actually succeed in the program?
Well, you have to be committed, compassionate, and most importantly, invested in caring.
Now, at the end of we talked about this, how at the end of the training program, there's going to be opportunities for employment. Can you just talk a little bit about the Menorah Center and the Isabella Center? I understand that they could go into either one of those.
Yes. Successful candidates, participants, students who complete the program and also obtain their certification are awarded instant career opportunities either at Isabella Center, which is located in Upper Manhattan, or Menorah Center, which is located in Brooklyn.
Now, what are the actual steps towards applying? Like, is there something that you have to write? Do you need recommendations? Could you just let people know what the steps are?
So if you're interested, you can send your inquiries at careerinfo.mjhs.org.
Now, I understand for a lot of people that are probably watching, this may be the first time, if they decide to go through with it, that they will have a professional or a pathway to a professional career. What would you say to encourage people who may feel a little bit intimidated by joining the healthcare field?
What I would say is let it go. You're always going to have the fear of what could go wrong or what you could do wrong. But if you're doing what your heart is telling you to do, and if you're committed and you have the support, you'll succeed.
Now, I want to talk about Nurse Week a little bit. We're going to actually have a full segment on that, but I just wanted to get your thoughts, as somebody who works in that field, why is it so important that we, honor our nurses and kind of have a moment to recognize a lot of the work that they do?
Nurses are the front line. They are in it 24/7, and it's important to acknowledge their dedication, their consistency, their commitment. And we do it every day. Celebrating them is something that is extremely important.
Now, do you have any advice for people, who, let's say they're probably young, maybe just starting to go into school, that kind of want to go into nursing or healthcare? What advice would you give somebody who's kind of just beginning that journey?
And the advice I would give is find a mentor. Do your research, see what's out there. There's so many nursing opportunities, including being a certified nursing assistant. And perhaps starting there will then lead to advancement.
And can you talk about your experience here at Lehman? I think it's so amazing. That is kind of like a full circle moment. Can you talk about your experience at Lehman and how it led you to kind of having the career that you have now?
Absolutely. So I got my undergraduate degree at Lehman. I don't want to say how long ago, but in therapeutic recreation, and I minored in speech pathology. So with the degree, and I'm also a certified therapeutic recreation specialist, I was able to obtain a career in the field that has led me here.
That's amazing. So there's so many options and so many pathways. I think a lot of people get stuck on like, I have to be a nurse or a doctor, but there's just so many avenues that could be taken. Can you just talk a little bit about, why that was important for you, or how you encourage people, kind of to not really kind of have that track mind that it's, either you're a doctor or a nurse?
Yeah, for me, I was exposed. And when you're in a healthcare facility like Isabella Center, you see all the different disciplines. You work with all the different disciplines. And so you broaden up your horizon, so to speak, and you start to learn and you start to gain. And from there, it leads the way.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us to have this conversation.
Thank you for having me again.
If you would like to find out about any job opportunities within MJHS, please go to their website at www.mjhs.org. And if you would like to sign up for the Certified Nursing Assistant Program, please email careerinfo@mjhs.org. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Open right after this.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
We all know what it's like to feel alone. But it just takes one new connection. Want to get out of here? To empower many.
This is unbelievable.
It doesn't take a superhero to bring forces together. We all have the power to reach out
Let's go!
and help someone feel like they belong.
Pretty cool, huh?
We are stronger together.
My character, Shazam, knows all about growing up in a family full of teenage superheroes. They're bold.
Where's everyone going?
To fight crime?
Okay. Adventurous. There's never a dull moment. And no matter what happens, they'll always have your back. All they need is a place to grow and be themselves. And the best part is, you don't have to be a superhero to adopt a teen. Learn more about adopting a teen from foster care. Visit adoptuskids.org. You can't imagine the reward.
Welcome back. Healthcare professionals across the country recognize May 6th through May 12th as National Nurse Week. Highlighting the work of New York nurses, the New York State Nurses Association aims to further honor and support these healthcare professionals. Director at Large for NYSNA and nurse Sonia Lawrence now joins me to discuss. Sonia, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, can you talk a little bit about, the meaning behind National Nurse Week and, just why that's so important?
National Nurses Week is a week designated by American Nurses Association to celebrate nurses, our accomplishments, how we care for our patients and our community. It's a way of honoring the things we do.
Now, how does it feel as a nurse, which I think is so amazing to kind of have these two roles? As a nurse, how does it feel to know that people are actually honoring you and recognizing the work that you do?
It feels amazing because nursing is more than just a job. It's a career. It's a commitment to taking care of people and providing care that especially our most vulnerable patients deserve.
Now, can you talk a little bit more about the organization, the New York State Nurses Association? Just tell us about the organization just in general, and then how do you acknowledge this week?
That's a great question. The New York State Nurses Association is a union of 42,000 registered nurses throughout New York State. We are affiliated with NNU, National Nurses United, which give us a voice of 22,000 in county. We are a union that provides care to all New Yorkers. We provide care to the underserved communities. We provide and bargain for safe nursing conditions. We provide care for the underserved communities and safe staffing for the people we care for.
Now, how does it, can you just talk about the importance of having, I know for a lot of associations, just having that sense of community means a lot to people. Can you talk about, for a field like nursing where, it is extremely hands-on, it's a lot of, just a lot that goes into it. How does it feel to have that support system filled with people who are also nurses?
It's amazing. We learn from each other and we support each other because nursing is a very demanding profession. We give care to all people, regardless of their color, their race, regardless of their ability to pay, regardless of insured or underinsured. We simply take care of every patient.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the pandemic because I understand the pandemic really changed a lot, just for the field of healthcare and especially for nurses and doctors. There was this effort to make sure that we viewed nurses in a better light than we did before. I think sometimes a lot of people took for granted the amount of work that nurses put in. Can you just talk about how it felt to be recognized from the public on such a huge scale during the pandemic?
Our public health nurses were there during the COVID-19 pandemic, and which is still here. We provide care to all New Yorkers. The COVID-19 pandemic was an incredible experience. We lost nurses, we lost patients, we lost loved ones. But the incredible thing about nurses is that we are resilient. We get right back up every day and we go out there and we take care of those vulnerable patients.
Now, despite the appreciation, because I know that we call them healthcare heroes, and so much was said about nurses, and I definitely saw from an outsider, perspective, I definitely saw this effort to make sure that nurses felt appreciated. Nurses are still facing a lot of obstacles in their field. Can you just overall just tell us some of the challenges that nurses are currently facing right now?
Yes, I can. Short staffing, high turnover, low pay, especially for our public sector nurses, are a real challenge. We do not have the resources and we do not have the manpower, meaning nurses, to provide the care that the most vulnerable of our patients need.
And can you talk about how was that heightened since the pandemic, or has things, because there's been this view on nurses, has it gotten better since the pandemic or has it gotten worse?
No, staffing has gotten worse since the pandemic. We have high turnover of nurses, especially in our public health system. The nurses come, but they do not stay. And the reason for that is because our pay is so low. The city pays millions of dollars to hire nurses, travel nurses, and nurses that are temporary to a real severe problem. And because of that, we have high challenges. We have our younger nurses, most inexperienced nurses at the bedside, now taking charge of patients. Our experienced nurses have gone away from the bedside and have left the public facilities. And the reason for that is that they just cannot take it anymore. They're burnt out and they're overworked and underpaid, severely underpaid. The private sector nurses make at least $20,000 more than our public sector nurses. And so it is more lucrative to go and work in a private institution than it is to work in the public hospital. This city needs to level the playing field and increase our pay so we can provide New Yorkers with the care they deserve.
Now, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, especially the part about burnout, because I know, like, just in the city, there's so many people, and while you're dealing with, especially in areas where so many people have so many health problems, like specifically the Bronx, we have, higher rates of a lot of health issues. Can you just talk about that burnout and, what that experience is like for a nurse? Because I think a lot of people, they'll say like, oh, well, that's, just part of the job, but it is very demanding. And I'm sure that it does come with a lot of, just a lot of negative, I don't want to say feedback, but it just has a lot that comes with it. So can you just talk a little bit more about that experience, dealing with burnout?
We take care of New York's most vulnerable patients, and we need experienced nurses at the bedside to do this. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we were so short-staffed that before all the help came in, we were taking care of a large amount of patients, way above our fair share that we could safely provide care for. It is difficult for nurses when we do not have enough staffers, but it is more difficult for our patients because they suffer more and they wait longer for care. And this is having a negative impact on patient outcome and nurse burnout. Sometimes we don't get time to go to lunch. We do not get time to eat because we're too busy providing care. And right now, patients are getting so frustrated that violence against nurses and frontline staff, the numbers have gone up.
Now, I understand that because of everything that you're experiencing, or that nurses are experiencing just in general, there has been a 3-day strike held by nurses at Mount Sinai and Montefiore. Can you just talk a little bit more about that strike?
I think that was an incredible strike by our private sector nurses. They were sick and tired of working with short staffing. They just were fed up and had had enough. So they took to the streets and they striked for 3 days and they won. Now it's time for our public sector nurses to have fair pay and, and appreciate and get to appreciate some of the values that our private sector nurses have earned.
Now, can you talk about NYSNA's efforts towards fair contracts for nurses?
Public sector nurses cannot strike. It is illegal for us to strike. So we have been mobilizing and we have been signing petitions. We have been doing rallies and speaking out to the press.
And can you just explain the difference between a public sector nurse versus a private?
The private sector nurses are the nurses like the ones that went on strike, the Montefiore's, the Mount Sinai, and so on. The public sector nurses, of which I am a part of, are the nurses that treat all New Yorkers. We are 11 acute care hospitals throughout New York. We also have the mayoral nurses who treat our firefighters and our police officers that keep them healthy so that they can remain on the job. And we are the hospitals that is the closest thing to universal health care that the city has ever seen. So we are essential to all New Yorkers.
Now, can you talk about the We Love New York Nurses Pledge?
We Love New York Nurses Pledge is a way that our public can support us during our fight for a fair contract. They can stand with us by going to the welovenewyorknurses.org and sign up.
Now, I think it's just amazing, everything that you're telling me. I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to speak about it because I think a lot of people just don't know what the reality is. How can nurses become a member of the NYSNA just organization so that they can feel the support from other people who know what they're going through?
That's easy. Work for a unionized hospital or work for one of our amazing public health hospitals or one of our mayoral agencies.
And can you talk a little bit about some of the events or just the organizations that you host for this organization?
Well, this Nurses Week, we are planning to boycott H&H celebration or the city's celebration of nurses because we need a fair and equitable contract. We are paid so low that we do not have enough nurses to take care of patients and community. So on May 10th, we'll be having a rally in Foley Square. It was supposed to be at Union Square, but circumstances, we had to change to Foley Square. So we're inviting you and we're inviting the public out to come out and support us as we fight for a fair contract and safety for our patients.
Well, Sonia, thank you so much for joining us to have this conversation.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
To see what you can do to support our nurses, please go to the NYSNA website at www.nysna.org. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recablecast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.